All right. So I think we'll get things going here. We're just heading to the 11 o'clock mark. So first off, I'd just like to welcome everybody to the second virtual seminar hosted by Even Spraying Chemicals and with Syngenta Canada doing Jason Steadwell from Syngenta Canada presenting the art of application. Give you a quick little bio of Jason if for you that don't know who he is. Jason's been working in the golf business for over 20 years. He studied the economics and international development at the University of Guelph, then followed up with a green space management diploma from Red River College in Winnipeg, graduating with honors. For the last 14 years, he's been working on the sales and distribution side of the golf business, starting at Even Spraying Chemicals, covering Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario as a distributor sales representative, but then moving to a sales manager. In 2018, Jason started his current role as turf specialist for Syngenta Professional Solutions Canada, providing technical support to retailers and customers and driving Syngenta's education and development initiative for Western Canadian golf market. Just on a side note, if you're ever in Halifax with Jason, do not let him navigate you around the city. So please welcome Jason and enjoy.
I'd just like to qualify that last remark. Even though I did get lost, we found a bunch of new pubs. So there's a win-win situation out there, right? Thanks, Darren. I appreciate that. And I appreciate Even Spray for putting this on. As Darren mentioned, I do know most of you that are on the call here. For those of you that don't, the bio kind of summarizes the career that I've had. Really looking forward to this year and hopefully COVID being behind us and getting out and being able to see a few of you guys. We had my first 2 years with Syngenta, I spent a lot of time in the West because I didn't know people and was developing relationships. And I'll apologize right now. I was a little absent in the Manitoba market consciously to try to develop that. And then 2 years ago, we had made some good plans to spend some road work with Craig and everybody to get out there. And obviously COVID hit and that fell through. So we've already been working with Darren and the Even Spray team, Kyle and Andrew and those guys to set up some times where I can go out and see you again and be more present in our market. So appreciate your patience, having not seen me that much, and look forward to reconnecting with you guys. With that, I just want to get rolling into our presentation here. They asked me to present on something that could help develop the technical aspects of spraying. So we've been doing this Art of Application series across the East for a long time. And in 2020, I tried to adapt it and bring it to the West. And again, unfortunately, it never really got rolled out because of COVID. But this is really kind of taking it to the next level on planning, product selection, and application. So it's sort of 3 phases of it. Hopefully, we'll be able to get together with a few of you on site with some smaller things where we look at sprayers and do the real tail end of this. But this is the front end of your overall application process that we'll cover off today. And my screen is freezing. There we go. So the outline for today, we'll look at planning, data collection, how to use that, product selection. We'll look at AIs, the importance of them and the importance of formulations, how mode of actions can determine your selection process, targeting and timing. And this is a really important thing as we find more and more data out. It's really key to product success. The product is one thing, but targeting timing is key. And we'll finish off with just a summary of sort of the 7 key things you want to keep in mind when developing a program or implementing a spray plant protection program. At the bottom of the screen here, you'll see Mentimeter.com or Mentimeter. There's an app on your phone which you can download, or you can just go online and do this. And this is a new sort of technology to allow interaction during presentations, which I'm trying out. I did a course not so long ago and they were using it. I thought it was very innovative and kind of a nice way to get some interaction, ask some questions. So if you can go ahead and, on your phones or whatever you have around you, either download the app or go to the website of this. As we come through here, you'll be asked to enter this specific code and things will pop up and you'll be able to ask questions and to interact. So I figured I'd start out with a nice video on, at the end of the day, this is how we should all be applicating, getting a nice, solid, technical application. And, you know, if you can walk away from this presentation and have this kind of quality of spray application with a high level of safety and everything else associated with it, then I'll consider myself having won and that we're all better off for it. So it is kind of crazy when you look at how things are done. A video camera chasing a spray pattern on the back of a camel. It's next level awe-shocking when you look at what we have to jump through. But it's important. I mean, this isn't to take away from the safety aspects that we follow. There's a reason we do it, and I'm glad that, you know, we have the rules in place that we do. So here's a first order of business is if you go to that Mentimeter site, this should go live with you guys. If you enter the code 4046 on Mentimeter, you will be able to enter in your choices here. And what I want you to do is rate in order of importance what you feel is most important for the success of a successful plant protection program. So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of get on there and get your answers in play there. If you're having trouble getting in, I may just bail on this whole process, but are you guys able to get in and oh, there we go. Yeah. So we're up and running. So. We'll give it a couple more minutes in case some more people want to join in on this, but what we have right now is good plant health as being the most important thing, effective planning and monitoring, correct product selection, and targeting application. There's no right or wrong answer for this. It's obviously just a feel to get an idea of what you guys out in the audience are feeling, and this is pretty common when I've done these before, that this is where it goes. Plant health is at the foremost of it. So sounds good. Okay, we got 7 guys in there. I encourage all you others to take a look at the app, or if you have access on your phone to just go into it, because it is helpful to get more data on there. But I'm going to move on to our next slide. So when we talk about plant protection, we're looking at a number of different components in that whole process of the spray application process. And you've probably seen this slide before. Product makes up about 55% of the success in a spray application process. Application timing 20 to 25, sprayer setup and calibration is the last 20 to 25, and 15 for sort of fine tuning. We're going to go through each component of this to kind of look how we can maximize within it. There's obviously variables. You know, product selection is one thing, but if you don't hit the back end, you're not going to get the same results. So it's important to understand each process and try to maximize the benefits of each sort of segment of your spray application to make sure that you get the best results that you're paying for. Fungicides are not cheap. They're probably one of the more expensive things you put down on your turf. So you want to make sure that you're getting the most of the things that you're purchasing. So the planning process. This is the gratuitous disease triangle that I think has to be in place for any presentation that's out there. And it is important, because the reason it's out there all the time is because the basic fundamentals of a successful spray program is this. You cannot have a disease event without the disease triangle, or a weakness in one corner of the disease triangle. You know, your environment has to be there. We know the pathogen's always there, so it's just waiting to either have a conducive environment or a susceptible host, or both, right? So at the end of the day, the conducive environment, beyond some minor cultural practices, we can't do much with. We can help it a little bit, tree clearing and things like that. But the biggest aspect we have is susceptible host, or plant health, right? So you saw in the previous slide your votes that plant health was in the top of the notch there, and that is going to be, if that's your mentality out there, that is your first step and your best step in maintaining a good, healthy plant and not having to spray or having to do a bunch of extra applications. So 5 keys to a good plant protection program is plant health and agronomic practices. That's where it's got to start. You got to be out ahead of the game, and you got to make sure that your plant can do everything that it can to defend against a disease without you stepping in. The next is data collection. So again, you guys had that monitoring, data collection. I think that the mindset's out there. It's been trained into people, but it's hugely important, right? We'll talk a little bit about that later on, but there can be too much data, but you still need a certain amount, and certainly site-specific data that is important to not only record, but then reflect on and action on in future years. Disease knowledge, you guys all have that. You're professionals of what you do, but it is important to know that you should be an expert on the ones that you're dealing with on a regular basis, and take the time and effort to kind of learn a little bit more about those things and reach out, because it will help you in the overall process. Product knowledge, this is where I come in, and this is where maybe we haven't done a great job as manufacturers of giving you the in-depth knowledge. That's one thing I found when I came over to Syngenta, was I knew about what the products did to specific diseases, but sort of what was behind the onion in respect to formulations and all these other things. So we didn't do a great job at sort of giving you all the information about the products that you could use to make a decision on it. And then site knowledge, that's really just getting to know your site. Where are your risk factors on your site? You know, if you have these 5 components and you're strong in them, then you're going to have a good plan in place, and you're also going to have probably healthy turf associated with that. So we're going to go on to the next slide now. 2 of 5, if you want to sign on to there. It should come up. Oh, this is not working out for me here. Bear with me here. Okay, so I'm having a little hiccup here. Uh-oh. There we go. All right, you had to reboot there. Can everybody see that? So what are the top 3 things that you feel contribute to a disease outbreak? So in your experiences in the field, what do you see? So this is a little bit of a word game. You can go in there, you can enter in whatever you think is the thing, and you're going to see the words come up on the screen, and the bigger they are, the more people have said these things. So you can go back into the Mentimeter there and enter in some of the things that you feel are causes. I expect that we're going to have some redundancy here, and I'm looking for that. But a lot of times you see these certain things come up that we don't always recognize or think about. So I think they're good good things to consider. Are we able to get in on this? If not, I'm just going to skip these Mentimeter slides. It's not working as smoothly as the pros out there did.
It may not be working here, Jay.
Okay, so you know what? We're just going to skip this. I'm going to go through these. I appreciate your patience with it. I thought I'd give it a good try, but obviously we got to do a little more research on how it works well for us. So one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is plant health, and I think it's an important thing. And last year we had a couple of really good examples of plant health and how it really impacts the performance of a pesticide application. And it was interesting because you always believe it, you talk about it, but you don't necessarily always see the specific results in a on-course situation. But there's some unique situations here at Nicholas North. So this is in Whistler, BC. What was happening here is they did a drain sort of refurb. The drain line had crashed in, so they dug it up, replaced it with a new drain line, put the sod down. They did this in May. The sod had healed, everything looked great. You know, as far as Aaron was concerned, everything was looking fabulous going into winter. They did the complete spray application, and you look here exactly where the sod line was. It wasn't different sod, it was just peeled back and replaced, right? So nothing new. The only difference between the turf that's diseased and isn't diseased is the fact that it got peeled back, and maybe the drain line's working better in drought stress. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just it didn't heal up enough, and through the summer when there were heat stresses going on, it caused issues. Don't know for sure, but we do know that it is really sort of that plant environment or that plant health. That turf was not as healthy as the stuff around it, and in a spray you can see it pop out, right? So we see this oftentimes, you know, in shaded areas on greens with tees, you can almost see a tree outline where you get the disease outbreak, and that's a plant health outbreak. It's not necessarily a product concern. It's about getting it better. But Aaron, as he started talking, we started looking at this. He's like, I got an interesting thing to show you too. So he had gone around as well in this area in his rough areas and stuff, and done 2 circles or 1 circle around all the catch basins to help try to get some more water moving in the spring. And just that aeration aspect of it, the plant health of oxygen in the soil actually allowed the plant to perform better versus the area around it. And I think it's pretty predominant, that one loop around there, there's no disease at all. And that's just from an aeration. So whatever benefits that aeration did with oxygen exchange, or maybe even the drainage, whatever it is, it created a healthier plant, a better environment, and it was able to do it without chemistry, defend some of the disease things there. So, with that in mind, I always like to frame it up as this: your chemical or your chemistry that you put down to control your diseases is really kind of like armor, right? You're buying this armor to help protect you against it, but you still need a strong knight or soldier in there, a strong plant to kind of fight against it too. And when you combine a strong product with a strong plant, you're going to have your best results out there. Contrary, you can have a really good product or really good armor, but if the plant's really weak, you're going to see some breakthroughs along the line. So really what you're trying to do is maintain that plant health like we talked about earlier, like you guys put in your poll, and then make sure that you choose the right products. And that's what we'll go through today when we look at things. But it's really neat when you can come across these sort of situations where you can snap a picture and be able to kind of connect the dots, because a lot of things in our world you can't connect those dots, right? You guess at things, and you're over winter, over 6 months, what might have happened, right? But here's some really concise things that show you that going into winter well, having good plant health and hardiness can really help you with success against disease. One of the things that you have to deal with today more than ever is outside information, 21st century turf management. There's so much data out there that you can use. And my only watch out on this is it is great, but you just can't get bogged down in the data. At the end of the day, managing turf is still an art, and it's still it's a organic thing where you're out there, and what you do with your visual perceptions and your understanding of your property cannot be replaced with data. But what data can do is supplement those things that you already feel. When you look at it, something's going on there, you can go pull some data, and it can help make either improved understanding of what's going on or improved analysis post events as they go on. So collecting data is important. People have different appetites for this across the board. You don't want to, data collection and data-driven decision-making can be overwhelming for many people, right? They think all this stuff and do it, and they just focus on the data and lose that sort of feel that you have on the golf course. But it's important you keep that feel, and then just use the data that's comfortable with you. So there may be people that want every piece of data, and that's how they feel comfortable managing their property. There may be some that just want a soil temp, that just want this. Any data that you collect is there, and I think there's a lot of easy tools out there now that you could do to have them. The new technology with satellites and infrared mapping with respect to on-ground analysis and how they connect is going to really kind of change the industry. We see it in ag already, where those satellites shoot a crop. They'll look at the hot spots. They'll have somebody go down, analyze what it is, enter it into an algorithm. And every time we have that on-the-ground data that you guys as superintendents would be giving relative to a mapped infrared or picture of some sort, it goes into an algorithm, and it gets better and better at the predictive capabilities of those algorithms. And those will be helpful tools for us in the future as we move forward, because we can predict things a little bit before we can see them, especially on large properties where you can't be over every inch of grass on every day. So a little plug to ourselves here, since it's a good even spray seminar, is that Greencast, and we believe in this technology, and we've got a few tools that are free and available to you if you haven't used them. I know I've talked to people in the past about them, but we're continually investing in our Greencast website to get improved tools. We have the Smith Kearns model on there now, where you can get dollar spot warnings sent out to you via email. We have our disease forecasting tool, which I'll go over in a second. We have a disease prediction tool or analysis tool where you can go in now, it's evolved now, where you can enter the environmental conditions, and it's going to narrow it down to potential diseases. Now, these are all just tools. You guys are still the professionals on this, but when you're wondering about things, you can go hot weather, the environmental conditions, type of turf, and it's going to narrow it down to 3 or 4 options, right? And then you can take it from the next level. So it's just a nice, quick, easy way to either confirm the decision you've already made, or just start the decision process by narrowing it down and then saving your energy on those types of things. But one I really like, and I think that is underused, and I encourage you guys to try it out because it's very simple, is our Greencast disease forecaster. So this comes from a really strong algorithm that's continually being evolved as more data gets added into it down in the US. We use it, and it's basically a temperature and environmental conditions algorithm, which leads to diseases. And you enter in your postal code. So you go on the Greencast website, you click disease forecaster, enter in your postal code, and what it does is pulls up the closest satellite, weather satellite, and loads up this environmental data. So it's actually got even more than this now. We've evolved it this year. So if you go on, you'll see a little bit different scenario with a lot more information on weather data. And this is telling you what it's going to look like from weather perspective. Then we go to the next one. From that weather data, it enters it into the algorithm and it pumps out what your potential risk factors are. So in this particular case, this was done in July 2020 in Winnipeg, and we had a high risk for brown patch, dollar spot, anthracnose, right? So this is really a warning thing. You guys are out there on there. There may be no anthracnose out there, but what this forecaster is telling you is that the environmental conditions are right for it. So if you have other factors in play, you might want to get a spray out there. And I love this for the fact that you can run this at the beginning of the week. You know, you can look at it as a team, a management team, and say, okay, these are the risks. Do we have a spray coming up? Did we just do a spray? Are we in good position right now not to worry about this stuff? But I think you can even take it to the next level. You can fire it up on the board, you know, and say, hey, team, this is what we have a high risk for out there. Some of my customers are putting up little laminated things of brown patch, what it looks like, dollar spot, what it looks like. So now you're empowering your team or your greens mowers or anybody that's out on those green sites with the knowledge of this is what this stuff looks like, and you have a bunch of scouts you're sending out above and beyond you. So it can really help you sort of get an edge on, you know, what's happening on your property. So it's not perfect in any ways, and you may see this red and not get any disease. This is not what it's doing. This is just telling you that from environmental factors, we're seeing a high risk of disease. So to me, it's a really simple tool. Check it in. It takes 2 seconds to do. If your postal code's already in there, all you got to do is go to the website and click on it, and it'll tell you, hey, we're looking pretty clean here this week. Let's focus on other things. We're working on an experimental one for ground temperature. So this, I think if we can get this nailed down, it's going to be really key for sort of our take-all and our summer patch diseases and timings of application, because it's such a precise window. And, you know, if you're outside of that window, you can see varying results. So we're really hopeful that this, as it comes along, will kind of give us some real nice spray time application information. And then this is a secondary one too. So you look, you see a high risk of sort of brown patch. You want to go out and spray for brown patch. You can now look at, you know, it's maybe not urgent today, but I want to do it in the next couple of days. You know, this tells you when your spray days are. So it's looking really at wind conditions, potentials for any sort of dispersion through wind, or even no wind where you're going to get issues with that as well. So, and this gives you your spray days. So dark green means a really good time, light green limited time, but you can still get out there and spray, and red's not, right? So you can look at your disease forecast and say, hey, we've got potential for this disease. We need to get out there with a spray. You can look at, here's the spray days we have, and you can use that to plan into your calendar. So I think it's just a useful way to get some information to help make decisions. It's free. It's there. I think I encourage you guys to look into it. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at information, there's so much data out there, whether it be with drones, satellites, you know, soil data, all this stuff. It is all important. Just don't get overwhelmed with it. Find what you need for your operation, what you're comfortable with, and use that. And I encourage you to grow, because I think as you get more and more of that information, you can make better decisions, and it helps inform on what things have happened. If you have the information available to you, you know, it points you down another road that, okay, it wasn't this that did it, wasn't this that did it, but oh, look at this data. Yes, okay, maybe that's what it was, right? And I think it just helps a lot in the postmortem or aftermath when you're trying to figure out what actually happened, oftentimes more than in the planning process, right? So it's, I encourage you to use whatever is available to you. It doesn't have to be costly. A lot of it's free, but if you're really into it, there are some really good things out there that can provide this data for a fee as well. I think I'll just throw it out to you. Anybody have questions at this stage? Please feel free to put questions into the chat box. And Darren, I think I just ask you if you can kind of monitor that, because with 2 screens going, it's a little difficult for me, but open to just take a little break here and see if there's any questions. Haven't covered anything revolutionary at this stage. It's just really going around the fundamentals of disease process. So. Okay, perfect. Chime in whenever you want, and hopefully we can get you answered in a timely fashion.
Hey, Jason, just before you get on to the next one,
yeah,
you know, Greencast is a great resource for a lot of superintendents. And do you think the spray application calculator is underutilized by many?
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, the spray application calculator is something that you can do, the math that you can do on that side of things, right? So, but to me, I always looked at it as that you want to double check, right? If your assistant's not around there, if you enter that data into the calculator, it pops it out. The nice thing about it is it's got all the products. It's not just our Syngenta product in there. It's got all the products registered in Canada on that. So you can figure out, what you need for a tank size, how much water you need to put in based on your output. So yeah, I think it's a really easy tool. It's also on the app too, the Greencast Turf app. There's a calculator on there as well. But yeah, to me, I think we don't see a boatload of hits on it, but it's one of those things that I use all the time. When somebody calls me up, I need to do this, I just go on there, fire it in there. And I work with these products on a daily basis. I could probably do it off the top of my head, but it's always nice to have that in there, and then I can print it off or screenshot it and send it to somebody. So it's super easy to use. You enter you choose the product from a drop-down menu, you enter your rate, you enter your sprayer volume, and it'll kick out how many tanks you need. So yeah, I encourage you to just dabble. We've done a lot of work on our website over the last 2 years, adding things and making things that were there better. I think it's when I started 4 years ago with this company, it was a pretty archaic website, and we recognized that. And we kind of looked to go to the Turf app as a thing, but we've reverted back that the website's a better way to go. And I think we're going to continually invest and make that better. But yeah, I agree. I think it is underutilized, but I don't know what people are doing, if it's just the manual calculations, which are fine, they work, but this is a nice backup to that for sure.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jay.
So product selection, I'm gonna ask this question just because it should frame up, what's the most important factor in choosing fungicides? I just look at this and think about it for yourselves. The app's not working, so I just want you guys to think of what you guys do. And it's really this question was meant to get your head frame around, why do I choose what I choose and what I do, right? And you guys are all professionals out there, which is nice, because most of the time it's related to some, but sometimes maybe we get stuck on price, and I think that's the biggest thing. It is important. Your budgets are incredibly important, but I'm hoping that the next part of this presentation kind of highlights that price is one thing, but what you're getting, value is the more important thing to go from. Like, ask the questions on, if it is the lowest price, what's the value, and what are the add-ons that I'm getting out of that, and are the add-ons worth it? If you're paying more for another product that's similar, what does it have to warrant that extra cost, right? And if it doesn't make sense for you and your club, then don't go that way. But I think a lot of times the understanding of those extra value add things, they're looking at, oh, well, we're both going after brown patch. Here's these two products. This one's cheaper. I'm going with that. But it may not have the sticking agent, which means that it will only last for 2 weeks as opposed to 4. So now that price is not there. So really, the next little part of this presentation is about encouraging sort of that, looking a little deeper into product, and hopefully giving you some of the questions you need to ask myself or your retail rep to get the data to make the right decision. So again, this was leading up to, we've had some conversations about all these products going off the market, like Iberdian, Trilogy, and a bunch of these things have left. And are we, in a worse situation than we have been in the past? And I would say that, myself personally, I think we're in a better situation than we've ever been in from a product selection, product opportunity, and even a product performance. Now, we're losing a lot of the broad range aspects of products that we used to have there. They're definitely more specified, but I think with that specificity, there is a functionality and an environmental aspect to it that makes it better from the environment and stronger on that specific disease, because you're not trying to hit a broad range of things. You're really focused on a specific target. It can create more tank mixes, and that's why I think you see a lot more dual products coming out now. We're looking more into doing more of that. Oh, look, it's back up and running. Good. So I think overall we're in a good situation. And to highlight that, I mean, we look at microdocium. It's the biggest thing that we concern ourselves with in Manitoba and the prairies, and really Western Canada for the most part. When we look at a disease in Western Canada, it's microdocium patch as the key dollar spend and the key issue for most people that live out here. Ontario would be dollar spot, and then microdocium followed very closely behind that, or maybe even Stephen. But when we look at just our portfolio alone, we have 7 products that are registered for microdocium. They span 5 different frac groups. This doesn't even include the Enstrata and Strata 2 combo products. So we've got a real diverse things. We've got an ISR, a group M, 11, 12, 7, 29. So there's a broad rotation of products. They're highly rated on Vinchelli across the board. I don't think anything's below 2.5 on microdocium. And we have some 4s, some 3s, some 3.5s through here. So some really strong products that you can rotate to address microdocium. And I would say you could put anthracnose in place of microdocium at the top of this list, and pretty much all of these are covering that as well, minus maybe posterity. So we're seeing the same thing for anthracnose, and those are probably the two bigger sort of summer diseases and fall diseases that we deal with in Western Canada for the most part. So we're in a good situation, and this doesn't even include like things like a firm and other things that are outside with other competitors that have different group numbers. Like a firm's a group 19, so there's another FRAC group there. For the most part, the rest of the competitors are with the group 3 and 11, and that's what we lived with. We used to live with the Banner DAC, group 3 and 11. You look at the Mirages of the world are 3s, the Premises are 3s, the Strobies, the group 11s are quite common throughout there. But there's a lot of stuff outside of that now that's very effective on microdocium. When we develop our products, so understanding a product, one of the things is we use the 12 green principles to develop these products. The new ones that we have coming down the line are all based on these sort of 12 principles of developing a product. And it's developed so we have sustainability and we can have these things for a lot longer. So our goal when we bring a new product to market is that it's going to be so far under the environmental standards that are out there that we're not going to be looking at reevaluation for a very long time. And these are the 12 principles that we typically look at as a basis to start that process of developing it. Once we sort of get through this stuff, then we look into the people behind it. And I just want to give you an example of Solatinol. So this is one component of the Instrata 2 product. So it's Instrata 2B, I believe is what it is. Medallion's Instrata 2A. We will have a combined product of that coming out in the near future. And it took 12 years in R&D using these green principles and everything else to find something that was right for us. It was over 30 scientists involved in this research, and there was over 800 original molecules. So when we look at it, there's literally a molecule factory in the UK that kind of puts together these molecules to see if they might work. And we kind of vet a bunch of them at a time and then dump them down into the next phase to get them out. So looked at over 800 ones to find the attributes that we did. And we're searching for specific things, right? So with Solatinol, we're able to find a product that had a good photostability and non-volatile. So, that means that, it goes well in the tank, and when it gets out into the environment, it's staying where it is. So when you place it, it's going to be where it wants to be. You're not losing it to environment. So more of what you buy gets to where it needs to be. That means it's going to be more effective, because anytime you lose product on the way to the pathogen or the fight, as I say, to the battle, then you're going to have less success. So the other thing is it's got balanced systemic movement, right? So not only getting it there and making sure, it holds there with strong binding activity, but once it gets there, it's got to move nicely through the plant or across the plant to provide the control that you were looking to get, right? Strong binding activity. So we often in the past have taken our older chemistries and added weather stick or things like that, because we realize that once you place it, we want to hold it there to have that effect, right? The goal when you're doing an application for fungicide spray is to place the maximum amount of AI where that pathogen is most active, right? So we can do that. But if we don't hold it there, it's only there for a period of time, and then it may wash down with your next irrigation or whatever else if it's not absorbed up, right? So we all often add sticking components. But a lot of the newer technologies, we're finding ways to basically bake that right into the molecular structure. So we have that without adding those additives. So it makes a much cleaner product overall. And then environmental excellent stability within the leaf, right? So the key to efficacy is how quickly that product, if it's systemic, breaks down, right? Solatinol is a systemic, so it gets up into the plant, right? But if that plant is not super stable within the plant environment itself, inside the plant, it's going to break down. And that's when we lose our back end, right? So we're looking at all these things, delivery mechanisms, all these things in the green when we develop products, right? And Solatinol is kind of one of our home runs in that respect, because we were able, through those 800 molecules that we looked at, find one that had all these attributes, or build one. Like it's not like it used to be where we just find it and hope for it. We literally have scientists putting different things together, almost like playing with Lego on a much, much higher level, and trying to connect things that might work. So in the end, the future looks bright. Not only do we have a really broad portfolio ourselves with attacking microdocium, anthracnose, dollar spot, the key diseases that we're facing in Canada, but we're also looking at bringing a bunch of new stuff to the market too. So in 2022, 2023 and 2024, we're going to see 6 new products coming. In 2023, there's going to be a new PGR for Canada. We have a biological company we bought 2 years ago. And the first rollout of this, Katie Dodson's actually been doing a lot of work in Europe with a new biostimulant that they have. So she really has a lot to say about it. Her nutrition background really kind of shines on this. And she's like, we got to get this in Canada. So we'll be bringing it into play next year. And then a novel new formulation to enhance our snow mold. So in Strata 2, we've been talking about getting into a single jug. We will be doing that next year. More importantly, there's a new formulation technology, a gel emulsion type thing that's got some really sick rain fast characteristics and uptake characteristics, you know, kind of a next level max, to be honest with you. It's probably going to be the core of all our formulations moving forward with most of the products. In Strata 2, the new in Strata 2 is going to be the first product in the Syngenta portfolio that's going to have this new formulation in it. So pretty excited about that. And then in 2024, we got an ASR product. It's something we haven't really dealt with. You know, the Elliottes and Fostrals of the world have lived in this sort of ASR true systemic sort of realm. We're going to have a product that exists in the States that we'll bring up here to kind of round out our portfolio on that side of things. There'll be a crabgrass herbicide coming to Canada, and then a new insecticide. This will be the biggest launch that Syngenta has worldwide, because it covers all our different portfolios, whether it be agriculture, PPM, horticulture, turf, right? So it's across all the boards. And the big news on this one is it's actually got some really good, strong chinch bug control, which in Manitoba, for the most part, other than a number of years ago, hasn't been a big issue, but it is going to be the biggest thing for like Quebec and Ontario, because there's no real good chinch bug product in Canada right now. Unfortunately, no ants. A lot of people ask about this, and doesn't really have any aspect on that, any control on ants at this stage. So we've talked about the products, you know, how important it is, 40 to 55% of your success in an application thing. How do you choose those products is an important thing. When selecting the right product for your choice, you got a number of things you have to consider. One of them is active ingredient, right? And that's key, because that's the thing that actually does the job, right? I think the second thing is formulation, and third is mode of action. Fourth is phytomobility, and finally is your frac grouping for making sure you're having a good rotation, right? So if you have a good understanding of all those components of a product, you can make a really good decision for what's right for you and your specific course and your specific disease application. So hopefully over the next few slides, you can kind of get a good base of, you know, what you need to ask or what you need to look for in a product to make a decision on what you want to address. So how do you choose your AI? End of the day, it's really about the testing. You want to ask your retail rep, your manufacturer rep, you talk to your peers. Ultimately, it comes from academia to begin with. All the research studies on specific AIs will be done at the research level, right? So that's going to do it. I love the Dr. Latin book, his new book that he's just published last year. It's revised from before. It's probably the best if you're looking for a good sort of comprehensive view on how to develop a plan, make sure you're choosing the right things, how to rotate correctly, all those sort of things. This might be the best book out there. Not many people read hard books anymore, but if you're one of those people, I suggest you pick it up. It's not cheap, but I think it's well worth the spend. We obviously have all these disease charts. That's the kind of basis that a lot of us go from. We look at the disease chart. I have this disease, and here's the product that goes. And there's a lot of trust, because the manufacturers, we've built products that we count on, and we know that you count on them. So these charts can be enough. But I think taking it to the next level and understanding a little deeper can allow you to kind of find some of the nuances between one product or the other if you're having a decision-making issue, right? And the first place I actually always go to is the Vincelli report, or the now called the Chemical Control of Turfgrass Diseases, because this is where, you know, they take 3 universities, all the studies that they do, and they compile this information and rate products, you know, based on, you know, their performance. And, you know, a 4 is great, it's top of the notch. And, you know, anything above a 2.5 basically is something you should be considering. Anything below that, there's probably better alternatives out there. The one caveat I would say to watch out on this one is that not all the rates in the US are the same as in Canada. So, example, like posterity, the high rate is 5 mils in the US, and we have 10 mils. And posterity at 10 mil rate on microdocium is rock star. At the 5 mil rate is okay, right? So you'll see some variables in that, but I think this is a really good starting point. You can look at these things, they look all right, and then you take it to the next level, asking your rep, your peers, looking at local studies. We're going to be trying to do, and we're spending a lot more money in bringing technical trials on the ground in Canada. I think you've seen that over the last few product launches, and we're going to see us continue to do that. To that end, we've hired a new technical rep. He should be starting next month. So he's going to be monitoring all the on-the-ground trials that we have going on, as well as being that sort of master's or PhD expert that's going to come in above my level of knowledge and work with any problems you have. So you have any issues, we'll have a technical rep that can manage that in-house with specific Canada-based knowledge. So understanding the impact of a formulation. This is a little bit of a repeat if you caught my CGSA one, but I think it's important because this is, we can have a great AI and it works great in the Petri dish in the lab, and works as good as any other one in there. They all look the same, but as you get further away from the lab, that's when formulations really make the difference here. About 25% of any product that we make is formulation or co-formulants, as we call them, and they're going to be anything to make that product better. So in a snow mold product, it'll probably be a sticking agent and an antifreeze component and all that sort of things. In the summer product, it might be something different, but we look and we spend 2 to 3 to 4 years sort of putting different components together to see what makes that best performance. And we'll test 10 out at the beginning, narrow it down to 6, down to 4, and then finally come up with one that we find performs the best over that cycle. And when we're looking at formulating, we're looking at, formulating for tank mixing to make sure that you can get a nice homogeneous solution at drift so that we don't lose any off-target product evaporation. So what kind of droplets are going to be produced by this to make sure that it stays where it is, or volatilization, is eliminated. Rebound or sticking effect, right? So these are things when we get on target with our sprayer, we want it to kind of hold and spread out from there, and spreading and runoff, right? So holding and not moving from where we've placed it is kind of key things. If we can tackle all the risk factors that come into play with these components, that means that anything you buy, and if you place it right with calibrated sprayer, you're going to get consistent success throughout, right? When we miss on some of these areas, right, then environmental impacts can really create inconsistencies in the performance of the product. So we're trying to kind of take out every environmental factor that we can that can impact the spray, and just have it sort of narrowed down so you can have a trust in the product's going to work time in, time out under different conditions. So application testing, we look at dispersion, right? Tank mixing, we got to consider things like cold water, warm water, right? If you're spraying in strata in November and you're pulling out of the river, it's going to be cold water, right? So we've got to make sure that that product dissolves in cold water, not just warm water, right? We can't produce a product that you're going to have to go get heated water to make it. That's just not going to fly in this day and age, right? So we focus on little things like that. There's so many nuanced things that are done at that formulation level that we don't know about, that take these. We don't have a problem because these guys do their work at their end. And I, the more I understand about this and the more I've worked building this presentation with the people who do the formulations, the more respect I have, and the more, we need to give them kudos and shout outs, right? Whether it be us or the people that work for Bayer or BASF, or those guys that are, spending those years, the companies that have a high-tech commitment towards formulation, make your lives easier without you even knowing it. We don't see this a lot, but I put it in here because poor solubility is kind of a thing of the past because of all the technology that we've come up with today, that even there's some really economical ways to make products into, a very soluble, very stable thing. But I do have this in there as a watch out, because a lot of times the tank mixes, we're putting lots in our tanks and we're mixing more and more together. And for the most part, it's been some pretty highly, formulated chemicals in conjunction with highly formulated nutrition supplements like the Griggs or the Brandts or things along those lines. As we break away and start seeing more ag use, and certainly in this budget year where it is that we may see more raw materials being mixed in, it is important that you start doing a few more jar tests and just make sure if it's something you haven't done in the past, be doing a jar test for it, because the variability from different raw materials of a different sort of ag source can make an impact on your spray solution. So in most cases, it's safe. There's not a huge number of watchouts because we do spend a lot of time with our formulations. But if you have a lesser or generic formulated product in with some raw ag materials, you may run into this. And anybody who's had a coagulated sprayer will tell you it's not something you want to have to deal with. So just take the time and do a jar test. This is just a really unique slide because it shows how a surfactant of some sort or an adjuvant of some sort can change the dynamic of water. In the left here, you have, a coaticide sort of application, and you see how it makes water into sheet. So this adjuvant is actually decreasing the spray pattern on the formulation. In the middle, you have water alone, and on the right, you have an adjuvant that's actually going to increase that droplet dispersion and do whatever. So we're always working to try to find things that can add to the tank or to the formulation that are going to allow that increased dispersion, because we know if you can have a really clean dispersion of your product, that you're going to have a real clean coverage of it, and you're going to get better results out of it. If you have something in the tank, or if you add something to the tank, that's the other thing you watch. Or what else are you putting in your tank mix? Does it have something that's going to impact how that thing sprays? Because a certain adjuvant for wetting agent might be that sheet-like look to get it down, get it past the leaf blade and into the roots. Whereas, that's not what we want out of a fungicide application. So understanding when you're putting different things in the tank, what they may do to the water is an important thing, because it can impact the performance of your fungicide. And then once it's on the leaf, right, how that droplet sits on the leaf. So we're adding things that really kind of spread out that droplet, allow it to hold there, right? The spreading allows, for a contact to certainly protect more of the leaf blade, but also it's going to allow systemic to find more stomata to enter through, so you're going to get quicker uptake. But more importantly, it's going to dry quicker. When you have a larger surface area exposed to wind and exposure, it's going to dry quicker, and the quicker it dries, we know most products nowadays, once you can get them dried on or into the plant, then they're safe. You're not going to have environmental factors. That large droplet that doesn't hold tightly to the plant is more prone also to, another droplet hitting and knocking it off, or just the gravity effect of it moving off target, right? So we spend a lot of time using our sprayer to get the product on target. The formulation inside of the jug will help us hold it there and get better performance. I think you might have seen the slide, but where we gotta go here. Click on it. So this is a non-formulated droplet dispersion based on a sprayer hitting a leaf blade or whatever. So you see a lot of bounce, right? So one of the things that we're trying to do is avoid that bounce and try to get as many of those droplets where we're doing it. The second one here is once you throw an adjuvant in it. So this is a holding adjuvant, a spreading adjuvant. So you can see a lot less activity, a lot less bouncing effect, right? So more of that product you're getting actually gets on the leaf itself. In a similar sort of, this is a single leaf blade with an optimized product and a non-optimized, just water, holding at sort of an angle of a leaf might sit. And when they go through it, they look and see how much was actually taken. And I think if you look here, oh, sorry, go back. Look here, this is the difference, right? So you got up to 6 droplets in this little test that we did that actually stuck to the plant. So that's what you paid for, right? With a straight water or things that don't have those optimization formulations in them, you may not get any of it on there, right? So this is why you need more product, more AI to try to get more hit on target, right? So this is why we're seeing you can use less AI, less rates of product and still get similar or better results, just because of the things that are happening in the formulation. And to give a fact on that, this is a canola-based thing with adepidin, which is the active in posterity. We see a threefold, more than a threefold increase when we optimize that formulation of the amount of product found on the leaf, right? So it's 300% better when you optimize the formulation versus not, right? So this is why we spend the money, because it gives the reliability you guys can count on, and it gives you more bang for your buck. So, you may have a generic or a similar product that's half the price. You got to start asking yourself, why is it half the price, and do I have to use twice as much? And maybe it's not the case, right? And really where this stuff starts to shine is, when you have low pressure out there, you may not notice the difference between the two products. But when you go into winter and you're counting on it over the whole winter, having an optimized formulation is going to be key for your success, because you don't know what it's going to throw at you. And then movement within the plant. We talked about that with the solatinol and how well it moves through the plant. This is posterity, or adepidin as we know it, and you can see here in the I guess I'm just going to fire up my laser pointer here. This is the one I really like, because it shows you application areas here, and we see complete movement throughout the plant, whereas the commercial triazole #1 is just kind of sitting in there. Now most chemical companies are trying to work on that translocation throughout, right? And this goes back to what we're going to talk to, or goes to what we're going to talk to in a little bit, of phytomobility of the chemistry itself. Certain chemistries just aren't phytomobile, but formulations can help increase and improve that. So I think it's important that we make sure that we're looking at that. And again, you might have seen this slide in my max formulation presentation at one point over the last couple of years, but this was the thing that hit home for me and started me down this road of doing more research on this. Is our old max formulation, those of you that can remember it, was the dispersible granule or wettable granule in the small little container there. It, at any test within our greenhouse unit in the UK, could only get about 50% of the product into the plant. When we moved to the max formulation, we got 35%, 30 to 35% in the first hour. And then in the first 24 hours, we were up to 40%. And we're able, in this greenhouse closed loop scenario, get all of it in there because any guttation water was caught and then reabsorbed through the roots, right? So this is how a formulation can really make a difference. So the AI is exactly the same in these two. In fact, it's exactly the same in that we make both of those AIs. All the difference in this is what we did with the formulation, and we saw significant improvement in performance. And that's because of this droplet size. You can see here, I think if you look, you got, this is the max droplet versus a standard sort of liquid formulation droplet, right? So it's all about getting it in the plant. 1400 max can go through a stomata versus 1 to 1.5, right? So you've seen the slide again. I keep bringing it up because I think that's the message. You're buying this product. The more that can get through the door, the quicker, the less all these environmental factors can happen. If the plant's growing slow and doing things, then it's not going to absorb that quickly, and then irrigation can even knock it off a place. So we want to get it in there. So another thing that's just jumped up to here was certain AIs just don't want to be in water or in solution, right? And we like to get things into solution because it's easier to add other additives to it, right? So certain things we'll add to a tank will allow it to, an AI to actually be wetted or get into solution, right? So it's important that formulations will help with that too. So we may have a great AI that works great in a Petri dish, but if we can't get it into a usable way for you guys to apply it effectively, then it's not really much good to you. Formulations, for the most part, come in two, liquid or solid. I think you're going to see moving forward, because wettable powders and the dust and the health risk to dust, WPs aren't even allowed in Canada anymore. You're not going to see too many of them in the dispersible granule side. It's older chemistry that will just run its course. Most of the new stuff is going to be in some sort of liquid form. We'll get it into solution like you saw in the previous slide. And because of that, we can also add all these other beneficial components to the formulation. So we're looking to, most of the new products you see coming to market are going to be in a liquid form. And the reason for that is it's a much easier management tool for yourself and ourselves to add attributes. So what are the different formulation types? WSP, WG, whales, right? WPs, liquids or solutions. Emulsified concentrates or MECs like the max formulation, or basically SLs or solutions. Water soluble packs are basically wettable powder in a pack, and that's just a safety issue more than anything. It's not a function of anything other than eliminating that dust and ease of use and worker safety. The packs don't actually make the product better. It's just a safety issue. One of the watch outs for this, there's not many out there yet. Most have gone by the dodo, but if you have boron in your tank, it will actually cause that packet to stop dissolving. So you may end up with a bunch of packets in the bottom. So if you are using a WSB product, make sure that you're addressing that. Wettable powders are gone, so I'm not even going to talk about it. WDG, we have Velista. It's an older chemistry. It comes in that granular formulation. It's basically just a dry flowable. You're going to put it in there. The old Daconil Ultrex was like that. Nothing wrong with it. Good product. They are limited in sort of the beneficial attributes that you'll see out there, but they also tend to be some of the cheapest products on the market as well. And this is where you see most of it living in the suspension concentrates, because this is where you can really get the power of all those extras we just talked about. You'll see a Celeprint, Posterity, Daconil, Instrata, Medallion, Secure, all of these. And then the new Instrata 2 is going to be in there. All of these are in the SC formulation, and most of them have enhanced performance attributes to them. Emulsified concentrates, that's really the old Daconil. The Solatinol in 2B, Instrata 2B is emulsified concentrate. We don't see a ton of those around anymore because of the smell, because of a number of different reasons. There's better technology. So you'll see them roll into MECs or different things. There's new technologies that allow us to get away from this. ECs are really an older ag tech that allowed things to get into solution through solvents. There's just better environmental ways. And when you look at the 12 principles, environmental principles we talked about earlier, or green principles, ECs really don't fit well into that because you're adding solvents or excess things to the environment that don't need to be there. And there's better ways to do it now. And then MECs is kind of one of the better ways, much better for the environment, much better for the product uptake and dispersion within the plant. It just takes, all these AIs to the next level, as you saw with the heritage. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at formulations, really think about how far it is from the lab. So if somebody tells you, well, it's the same AI, so, but we're half the price. In most cases, that may be true, that it is the same AI, same half the price, but that's not the whole story. So I encourage you to ask the questions on what other benefits they have in there. And I encourage you to do a trial too, because in most cases, we'll see when you do a head-to-head trial, the efficacy, the breakthrough, or especially if you do it under a high-pressure situation, anytime people stray from us, we usually see those people come back. We saw a big push with Primo and T-Nex going and, gaining a lot of things because it's just a growth regulator. It's, it's way cheaper. I'm going to go this route. But what we saw, certainly in Alberta and BC, where they were measuring clipping weights and doing all these things, is that they were getting breakthroughs, in the 21-day mark or sooner, versus about 5 to 7 day difference from the Primo to the T-Nex. And when you factor that in, there's really no price difference. And then you also have that's not even considering the extra app that you might have to do throughout a season. So you see these things that formulations matter in efficacy and performance, and they certainly shine when the going gets tough. Any questions? Going through a lot of information here. We're in the home stretch here. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left. So mode of action and phytomobility. So this is an important thing. So you got a product that we're telling you is this, and it's got this formulation that's going to do this, but it's important also for you to understand, what it's going to do within the plant. And that's where phytomobility comes into play. And what is phytomobility? It categorizes fungicides according to their ability or inability to penetrate and move within plants. So when we look at a contact fungicide, so in this diagram here, we're seeing basically the contact will hit the leaf blade and go nowhere further throughout the plant. And that's what we know it to be, right? It's a contact. You cover the leaf blade, you protect it from entering, and then some contacts like Daconil, Secure, Medallion will be multi-site, and they'll actually have activity on the pathogen outside of the plant, as well as protecting the plant itself. So acropital penetrant. So this is something that, I used to call just a systemic, but it's really not a true systemic. It's an acropital penetrant. And this is your DMIs, your banners, your heritages of the world. And you're spraying it on. It's going to enter the plant through the stomata. It's going to find its way to the xylem, and it's going to move up the plant, right? So acropital penetrants will penetrate the plant, get the fungicide within the plant, and it'll move up the plant to things above it. So, when you're applying an acropital penetrant, right, if you want to get a microdochium or anthracnose, you want to make sure your water volume is high enough to get it down deep enough, because it will move up and protect against dollar spot and things above it, but it's not going to get low enough or move down the plant if you don't spray it deep enough. So, understanding the phytomobility of the thing will determine your water volume and where you target to spray. And then localized penetrant, we have a lot of these in the market. It's what Iprodion used to be. Medallion actually has some localized penetrant. Insignia, Compass, those strobies from Bayer and BASF have localized penetrant. And this is really also called translaminar, right? So it's going to enter the plant, but it's not going to enter the phloem or xylem. It's going to enter the plant and translocate to the backside of the leaf. So these are beneficial in that you get much better coverage through this translocation, and there is some within the plant in the area of application. It translocates through, so you're going to have it through that stream, and tends not to have the same efficacy. And the importance of this is that you've got to make sure that your application is targeted precisely to get the best results out of these. Imprecise targeting will have some negatives to it. Not dissimilar to an acropital, imprecise or high targeting is not going to benefit low diseases, but at least with acropitals, you can penetrate deeper and you will get coverage above. So that's just basic understanding of the mobility of the product will help you, determine that water volume for your application. And then the systemics, there's not too many. There's a Signature Extra and Fostrol, I think, on the market now. This is basically all the phosphates are systemic. Phosphates are systemic. And then our new ASR product that's going to come in 2024 will be in the same mode. And this one basically enters the plant. It's going to move up and down. So you have a lot more luxury with your spray because it's going to move throughout and get the job done wherever you need to be. This is why these are good on Pythium type diseases, because they can move down and get in the plant down at the root level, as opposed to having to drench it into the soil and lose them on that side of things. So understanding this will help you understand the correct targeting. And that's what we're going to roll into in the next slide. But right now, this is kind of the most recent list that I can find. I think there's got to be something better out there I'm going to work on. This has all of the fungicides that are available in Canada based on whether they're contact, so Daconil, Secure, and Medallion, versus a localized or translaminar, which is Medallion, Affirm, Compass, and Insignia. And then there's a boatload of acropitals. So this is basically all the DMIs on the market, a couple of the Strobies, and all the SDHIs. So that's basically what we're seeing here. And then you got your phosphoric acid and your phosphol, which is phosphoryl aluminum, which is your Allied signature type products. So covered all of that. We kind of look at how the product moves within the plant, how formulations benefit it, how to sort of choose and make the right choice on your specific diseases using your data and planning, and then application timing. And this is the last one. This might be the most important one because you can make all the right decisions before this, have everything set in place, but if you don't target it right or time it right, you're not going to get the results you want, even if you have the best product and the best decision-making process. And essentially, that's the 20 to 25% we're saying. And in some cases, it could be even more if you're really off target. And to this, I go back to two things with timing. One of them is timing of the disease cycle, right? So we know that, in the preventative phases, there's an early and a late preventative phase. And in the top left corner here, this is the early phase. And this is when, that forecasting tool on greencast is helpful because the environmental conditions are primed for this fungi to flourish. So it kind of comes out of hibernation and it gets active. Does not cause any harm to the plant at this stage, but it is active. So that's the environmental triggers happen. At this stage, all you can do to control it would be a contact fungicide. So, a lot of times people will do systemic fungicides as preventatives, which is great if you know your timing and they're in place. But really, if you really have your timing keyed in, throwing a contact into there can be even more beneficial because you knock it out before it even gets close to causing any harm in the plant. The sort of later preventative stage is when that pathogen actually starts to penetrate, but there's no cellular damage yet. At this stage, both systemics and contacts will work. So again, if you're a preventative sprayer and you want to prevent timing, if you know well what your pathogen does on your site, combining a contact and systemic can be very beneficial and not that much more money either, because you can go with a much lower systemic rate if you combine it with a contact that is well timed, because the contact takes care of a lot of the stuff outside the plant. So you don't need as much AI within the plant to combat stuff that might have gotten through. Whereas if you're looking at a longer term efficacy of a systemic product with just systemic, you're waiting for that plant to, that pathogen to enter that plant. So you need a higher concentration to make sure your walls are shored up. We look at the curative stage. Up here we starting to see cellular damage. You'll probably see some stress on the plant from the visual eye. Only systemics work. It's too late for contact at this stage. And then your final stage of blistering. And the ironic, or not, no, second to last stage is your fourth stage, a late curative stage. This is the blistering. So this is usually when we're mostly reacting. We react, if you're a reactive sprayer, when that blistering happens and you see that lesion on the plant, then you're going out and doing a spray, right? So you're already well into the disease cycle. So even though it's systemics are the only ones that will be active at this single spore at this single stage, we also know that there's going to be some spores that are behind this stage and some spores that are ahead of this stage. So I would encourage you, not only if you're a preventative sprayer to use contacts, but if you're a curative sprayer to go with a contact systemic combination. And probably you need the higher rate if you're at this stage because your disease is further along in the cycle. So you end up, by waiting, you oftentimes end up spraying more than you would if you, understand your property, get out ahead of it with low rate contact, systemic, preventative, and try to time it on that side of things. Time and again, I see that because a lot of times the next phase is the sporulent stage, right? So if you go in with just a systemic in the pre-stage and there's a bunch that have broken through, you have a high load of pathogen waiting for the next disease event to happen. And that's going to happen the next time the environmental conditions or the plant is susceptible, which oftentimes is right away. So the minute that pathogen or the systemic is gone from the system, the pathogen's up and running again. We see that with dollar spot. It's just the environmental conditions are perfect for such a long period of time, and in Ontario in particular, that's just, they have to do application after application. If you can get out ahead of it and keep that pathogen load down early and knock it back early, you just have much better legs in the back end, and you can do more with less. Interesting thing about timing is Dr. Koch, and you might have seen his presentation here. I'll highlight it a little bit because it really goes with physical timing, right? So he's got a bunch of dates in there, but I encourage you to look at these two columns. This is the disease severity, and this is the temperatures, because I think this, for snow mold applications, to find the right time to do it, or sometimes you don't have a choice. If snow's coming, you got to put it down, but at least it'll give you the information relative to, did I go down early and what can I expect, right? Because when we look at here, 13 Celsius, 9.2 Celsius, 6.3 Celsius, 3.5 Celsius, if we look at that, really, the window is right here. When it goes from 9 to 6, we got a significant decrease in disease severity to a point where we're almost acceptable. When I look at this, this is just 1 year's data. He's going to do more, but I look at this, my kind of mind goes that, when soil temps are at 5 Celsius, that's the prime time. Anytime after that, you're going to get the maximum effect out of your Instrata application. And this is essentially the poorer performance that we see here is not because the product didn't work. It's because the plant's so active. It's metabolizing some of that product. It's probably grown out of some of it, right? It's not settled down. When you apply an Instrata application, when that plant is shut down and ready to rock for winter, then we're seeing, the later you go, there's no negative to going later. In fact, it seems to get better and better. But, you do have that early window. Some guys want to get out earlier, snow's coming. I look to sort of that 5, 6 Celsius sort of soil temp. That's going to be where it is. And again, he's going to come out with more data on this, and it's going to hone it in. And he's working on that cooling degree day model, where hopefully he can, come up with a sort of magic number, kind of like your heating degree day models with Primo. And this is the results, right? So these are the ones, anything after, 6 Celsius, looking great. And even that one at 6 is pretty good, right? So, that kind of tells you that this is what, when we pay for snow mold, we want to see this kind of control going on. Targeting is more important now than ever with the low AI type products on the market. We want to make sure that you place, and targeting, when I say targeting, I mean, what disease are you going after? Know that disease where it lives. Anthracnose, microdocium, mat fats layer. So you want to place maximum AI in that layer. Dollar spot, red thread, things that live in the leaf spot, live in the upper leaf blade. You want to put most of the AI in the sort of upper leaf blade, or using acropital, send it a little deeper and let it move up. Either one works on that side of things. So when we have a low amount of AI, we see different performance based on targeting, more so than we did with the Dacno, where it's just huge AI loads. You hammer lots of it down there, and it's like carpet bombing. I think some of you may have heard me talk about that. I look at older technologies with high AI loads, just put it down at high water volumes, and basically you're getting everything. And, the negatives of that is you have a lot of cross contamination towards, maybe beneficials that are being harmed by it. With these new technologies that secure at like 16 mils per 100, posterity at 5 mils per 100, Solatino at 6.75 mils per 100. They're really precise. They're extremely good, but they're more like a guided missile, right? If you place them and target them right, they're going to have way more devastation than the carpet bombing will. But if you miss the target, you're not going to get the same results. And that being said, we see that in how to target things, what we want to look at. We see different performances. So where to target? We want to target the pathogen base camp. Where that pathogen lives, place maximum AI. You want to understand the product characteristics. I touched on that earlier, right? How does that product move within the plant or on the plant? And then you use that to define where you want to place it based on the pathogen you're dealing with. The stage of infection, I went through that earlier, right? If you're early stages, only contacts, right? Later stages, you want to get systemic contact into play on that sort of thing. And then your environmental conditions, right? What's going to happen shortly after? Are you going to get a rain event or do whatever else, right? So if you choose a localized systemic or a contact in wet conditions, it may get washed off and have no benefit. So, you might consider that, hey, I want an acropital if I got sort of potential wet conditions coming out, because even if it gets washed down, it can be absorbed by the crown or the roots and then come back up like a heritage type product, right? So understanding that might be a way that you can sort of circumvent some of the environmental conditions that you're facing. And finally, plant growth potential. So this comes basically down to the fact that, we see this a lot of times in our fall snow mold stuff. If you have a purely systemic product, in the fall snow mold application, if that plant's completely shut down, maybe your systemic's not getting up and in there. Or if your plant is diseased through the summer due to drought stress or heat stress, and that plant's shut down, you put a systemic product on there. If the plant's not able to absorb it and move it through the plant effectively to do its job, it doesn't get in place to sort of defend against that disease. So you think the product didn't work, but reality is it would have. It's just never got to where it needed to be. So understanding, what's going on with your plant. If it's kind of shut down and not doing much, then you really want to lean heavily towards those contact products that are just going to cover, and maybe even a localized penetrant of some sort that's going to sort of just move locally and not have to have that heavy lift of xylem that's not going to be there with a plant that's really in a poor functioning situation. And how do you target? Really, water volume, nozzle selection, application pressure, and transport speed. Those are really the three things. I think the biggest one I've touched on already is water volume. I think you've seen this slide, leaf diseases, 3 to 5 liters, 1 to 1.5 gallons, crown diseases, 6 to 11 liters, 1.5 to 2 gallons. So that water volume is going to place that product where that pathogen is. And then root diseases, you got to get above 3 gallons to get it down into there. Dr. Latton's done some work saying that, 5 gallons doesn't make any difference from 3, right? So the key to the root-borne diseases is get it past the leaf blades and the crown, into that upper mat layer so that it's not absorbed. Because things like heritage that we see, like 30% of it's in the plant within an hour, if you leave it sit on the blade, it moves up the plant, not down. So it's not going to be in action down there. So you want to get it past those uptake points and into where you need it. An example of the product I told you, Secure Daconil at a really high rate, has the least disease pressure in studies that were done. I think this was at Rutgers. And then we see Secure, which is also working on dollar spot. That was a dollar spot trial at the low rate. So at 0.5 gallons versus 2. So it gets worse on dollar spot as the gallonage goes up. And this makes sense because you're placing more and more of that product. And Secure is only 16 mils per 100. So there's not a lot of AI. And as you place it down, there's not as much of your product that you bought going into battle against that pathogen in the upper leaf blade if you place it too low, and it's not moving after you place it, right? So we see contrary sort of water volumes for contacts. So even though they're both contacts, because of the formulation and the AI aspect of it and the low AI aspect of it, the water volume is very key to success. And ironically enough, Koch did trials last year because we were asking, well, how does this impact microdocium? And what we see here is that, Secure at the 1.5 gallon rate actually performs better. So 8% damage on a 70% damage plot. And we see the same thing with Medallion here. It's 5% damage, on some pretty severe snow mold pressure at the high rates. But if you look at the low rates, Secure at that half gallon rate where it rocked out at dollar spot, it's got 31% damage here. And then same thing with Medallion at the low gallonage rate, it's got 20% damage. So it's a big difference, right? And that's really about, these contacts, and both of these have activity outside the plant on the pathogen. So if you place those products where that pathogen's living and active, you're going to see a significant increase in performance because it's going to actually not only protect the plant there where most of the pathogen is, but also kill some of those pathogens outside of the plant. So you have less likelihood of being reinfected in there. And the importance of this is when we look at traditional chemistries that we know, Daconil at the 1.5 gallon rate had 36% damage, Interface 21% damage, right? So not only are these products better on microdocium at the higher rate, they're actually, Strata was the only one with a 0. They work as good as almost anything on the market. So this goes back to the point that we have some really good microdocium chemistries. If we use them correctly, there's a lot of rotation, a lot of good things that can happen in maintaining your disease. I'm going to skip through this because we're running a little late. This is really droplet hang time. Biggest thing about this is when you get fine droplets, you got a lot of drift and you're getting off-site stuff. Most of our products are going to reduce against that, but nozzle selection is important for this. You want a medium to coarse. I know I've worked with most of you guys already. You guys are in AI nozzles. You should be having AI nozzles and sort of a medium to coarse droplet to get your best effects. When we look at our Syngenta nozzles versus that flat fan standard, we're seeing a significant improvement in the amount of product getting down onto the leaf blade. You'll see that with just a standard AI nozzle as well. We get a little bit better performance due to the angle, but other than that, choose your nozzle, use an AI nozzle to get your best results out of your fungicides. And then speed, you don't have to just add water volume or do whatever. I mean, if you change your speed, it's going to add water in the long run, but you can, whatever works for you. You can adjust your speed or transport speed to get better coverage. Use your nozzle, your speed, and your water volumes to find what works for you and your timing and your club, and try to make sure that you get that target of that AI where the pathogen is, and then you're going to get the best value for your dollars and cents. End of the day, 7 steps to spraying success are: remember your disease fundamentals, right? It all goes back to the disease triangle. That'll answer why things are happening. And if you can correct those things outside of it and not have to use chemistry, then that's your best bet. Keep your plant healthy. Develop a good plan to mitigate risk, right? So understand the risks of your site, so what sort of closed-in environments or traffic or whatever else is causing, the plant stress or the diseases to come out, and try to mitigate any of those factors so that your likelihood of getting a disease event is down. Know your pest and disease, right? Know what pests that you're going to have on your site, and know them inside out when they come up. And if you know that, then you can be one step ahead, because when you're one step ahead, you will, I guarantee you, spend less money with Syngenta and even spray on it, right? And even though that seems counterproductive, it's not. We're here for making sure that your turf health is at its best. And if we can do that time and again, then we have you as a customer for a long time. If you're having to go 10, 15 times with a spray, then that's not good for us or you, right? Or the environment or anything, right? So we want to make sure that you succeed, and being out ahead of things are succeeding. And using contacts, I think, can help you with that as well. Select the best product for your needs. Again, ask those questions of me or Darren or Kyle or Andrew or whoever you're dealing with, and put us to the test on, why am I paying a little more for your product, right? Make us tell you why, and then you can decide whether, that attribute or the things that I just told you are worth the extra money or not, right? Correct product placement. This I can't say enough about. As I see the data come down, you saw those last few slides, you can buy the best product, believe in it, but if you just don't place it where that pathogen is, right? You got to put your soldiers into war against the pathogen soldiers, right? And, if you drop them, 10 miles off target, they're not going to go to battle, right? So, essentially place that product correctly and have an understanding of how that product moves within the plant, so that you can make sure that you can use your water volume to adjust according to those limitations. And proper calibration sprayer, that goes without saying. We'll do some art of application insight in-service things with you guys, and then post-application documentation. When you have events, when you've done things, go back and note it, because that can be the tools that you use to develop and mitigate the risk in the coming year. So I think if you follow these sort of steps and do these things, every year you should be getting a little bit better and better. There may be years where Mother Nature kicks you in the butt, but you learn from those things, right? You learn how to combat those things, and that becomes part of your plan. So it's a continually evolving plan. I apologize, I went a little longer than I thought. Practice was a little quicker, but hopefully you were able to take something out of this that you can, take into the season this year, and make your course a little bit better. And I'm always a phone call away, and I will be on the road with Darren and the guys coming out to see you guys. So look forward to that. And any questions now?
We'll open it up for some questions here for Jay. First, I just want to thank you, Jay, for being able to take some time away from your busy schedule and do this presentation for us. There's definitely some great, knowledge from yourself, and some great data out there as well for everybody to take a look at. Touching on one point, I definitely suggest, if you haven't hit Greencast, it's a great site with some great tools for the superintendents and turf care people out there. So yeah, it was a great presentation. Thanks, Jay.
Yep.
So I'm not seeing any questions here. But
that's a good job, right? Or they're all asleep, one or the other. Either way, I'll take it.
I had a question. Can you hear me, Jay?
Yeah, you bet, Rob.
Yeah, I may have missed it because I had to step out a couple of times. Did you talk about the pH of the water going to the spray tank solution at all?
I didn't, because most of that's been mitigated out, right? It's a big thing with herbicides, but for the most part, really not much, especially in the way of our fungicides. I'm not so sure about. Again, this goes back to, like, when you look at generics or some of the cheaper products that maybe aren't focusing on what's in the jug as much, it may be a bigger concern. You might want to do it. most of the time, pH is being buffered out with fertilizers because not many people are just doing standalone fungicide applications. But to answer your question, with our products, again, on the Greencast, so this is a good connection for what Darren just said, there is a list under the Art of Application tab on our website, and it has a pH list on the pH effective levels of products. And I think Daconil might be the only one. When you get into 8 point something pH, Daconil's effectiveness will be mitigated somewhat. But for the most part, that's where our formulation guys really have stepped up. And if we know there's a specific AI that is susceptible to, a decrease in performance due to pH factors, then there's going to be a buffer put in that solution or in that formulation to make sure it is. And it's about trying to get that consistency, because we realize that when we look at the North American market, the water quality is going to be diverse across the board. And we're always trying to make sure that wherever you are, however you're using it, you have that same consistency of the product.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay, hearing none, just once again, thanks, Jay.